Very good morning, students. So today we are having a topic which is very important as per the digestion in the animals is concerned. So this is the symbiotic nutrition and the symbiotic digestion. This is a particular topic that you have already done in your BSc, but here there will be some modifications which will be told to you, which are very important in the case of symbiotic nutrition. So here I have given an underlining heading that this particular lecture will be on the physiology of digestion, which is aided by symbionts. As in our case, you have studied the digestion in mammals. We don't have any kind of bacterial symbionts or flagellate symbionts, but in different animals, like in case of rabbits, the large bulk of the food, it consists of the cellulose. Now this cellulose is coming from grass, as they are herbivores, so they are eating lots and lots of grass, as we don't eat because we are incapable of making cellulase enzyme, so we cannot eat raw grass or raw food as such. But in case of rabbits, they have a special structure called cecum, which has developed various microorganisms for cellulose digestion. So this cecum, it is present at the junction of the small intestine and the colon. And this cecum, it serves as the site of cellulose digestion, which is brought about by the help of different fauna of microorganisms which are being reared in this cecum. So I want to mention that these microorganisms can grow, they can proliferate, and they are viable in the cecum of rabbits, but they cannot be viable in the cecum of a human. Perhaps we have lost that particular environment in which those bacteria, they love to proliferate. So those bacteria, they are incapable of living in our digestive system. Though we have got a cecum also, we have got vermiform appendix, but we have lost the digestive power of cellulase, or we have lost the enzyme cellulase, or I say we don't produce, or we cannot produce cellulase because we don't have those microorganisms in our intestine which can produce this enzyme, the cellulase. If our system would have got the microorganisms, so our food may then include the cellulose or the raw plant materials that would have been digested by those bacteria, or the cellulase enzymes by those bacteria in our intestine. So students, this topic will be on the symbiotic nutrition and symbiotic digestion in case of different mammalian forms and various invertebrates. So let us start with it. If we talk about the stomach of the ruminants, so here this definition is very much fit for those kind of stomachs. So the definition goes like that nutrition involving the mutualistic microorganisms which are capable of digesting the ingested food materials is known as the symbiotic nutrition. So that means that if you are capable of digesting the cellulose containing food materials, then you are a good, then you have a very good symbiotic digestion mechanism. Then you can have a symbiotic nutrition. Otherwise, that that particular intake or the ingested food will be thrown out of the body simply without digestion. So that means if your body is capable of being a symbiotic nutrition animal, then only you can eat those kinds of foods. Okay, now if I take a similar structural modification is present in the stomach of ruminants. So if we talk something about ruminants, then the capacity of this ruminant stomach, it varies with the age and the size of the animal. So as the name suggests, ruminants, basically they are the rumination performing animals. So there is a process which is called as regurgitation. So they first of all swallow the food, then that food is taken back into the mouth, they chew it and they mix it with saliva, lots and lots of saliva, then they eat it second time. So this is a dual kind of course in which the food is taken inside the stomach. So in case of these herbivores, ruminants is a group of animals which is performing rumination. Now if we go by the herbivores, the herbivore food, it contains a lots of cellulose because they are grass eating animals, so it is containing lots and lots of cellulose. Now as we have earlier discussed that the mammals, they are unable to produce cellulase, as we have discussed our example. So we cannot produce cellulase because we don't have those microorganisms, the symbiotic bacteria or the symbiotic protozoans in our intestine which are producing this cellulase. So we are incapable of producing cellulase. So we cannot eat those foods which are rich in cellulose. The ruminants, they have a large storage chamber which is called as a rumen. So in the coming part of the lecture, we'll be talking about the primary structure of a ruminant stomach and how it works, what is the mechanism of regurgitation. So it will be taken later on. But here it is mentioned that the rumen is a big chamber in those stomachs of the ruminants. So if we go by the size, in cattle of a medium size, the size of the stomach may be up to 130 liters, while in the case of larger animals, it can go up to 200 liters of capacity. So you can well imagine that how big is the stomach of these ruminants. Now this ruminant stomach is a compound organ and it is consisting of four major compartments. So that will be taken on later. But here we are talking about a large storage chamber. This is one of those chambers which is called as rumen. Okay, now this rumen, it contains a large number of bacteria. This is the most important point, that this rumen is containing a large number of bacteria which produce cellulase. So these are the bacteria which are producing cellulase. That's why those ruminants, they are able to digest cellulose. Now the bacteria and the ruminants, they both benefit from this particular relationship, which is also known as mutualism. So that simply means that the bacteria which are present in the stomach of those ruminants, they are taking shelter from the ruminants. They are protected. They are in a very, very protected environment. And what they are doing for the ruminant, that they are producing cellulase. And this cellulase enzyme is very much required by the ruminant. So both are benefited. The bacteria are getting a place to live. They are very much protected. They have a very sound surroundings and they are getting their food from the host. So the host is also taking benefit of these bacteria. So this is called as mutualism. So in the coming part of the lecture, we'll be seeing that the bacteria, they are also getting energy from the feed of the cattle, the feed of the ruminant. So bacteria are also taking food from the host, and the host is also getting the benefit of cellulase from the bacteria. So this kind of relationship is very, very important in herbivores. Now we are talking about a typical ruminant stomach. Now this ruminant stomach, it can store food for large times. It can store food for the further modifications for a good amount of time. Now the food is stored in these regions prior to the digestion. So after this diagram, we'll be taking up the physiology of the stomach. But here, first of all, we should go by the chambers of this typical ruminant stomach. So as we have discussed earlier, that this stomach, it has got four major chambers. The first chamber is the rumen. So this is quite a big chamber in this case, and this is the first chamber in which the esophagus is opening. So as the food is taken inside the esophagus, you can very well see in the diagram, the food, first of all, it enters this big rumen. And this rumen chamber is also known as paunch, P-A-U-N-C-H, paunch. The second chamber is the reticulum. This reticulum is also called as the honeycomb or the honeycomb chamber, because if we cut it and see the anatomy of this particular chamber, internally it is very similar to the honeycomb structure. So that's why it is called as the honeycomb chamber. Third chamber is the omasum. Omasum is also known as saltarium. It is also called as many piles. Many piles, Manypiles, because it has got numerous folds. So omesum, if we cut it and see it internally, it has got many folds in the internal layer. So that's why it is called as many piles or saltarium. As we have got rugae in our stomach, the omesum has got the folds. Now, we have got the fourth chamber, which is called the abomesum. Now, this abomesum is also called as a rennet, R-E-N-N-E-T, rennet. And most of the scientists, they think that the abomesum, the last chamber, is the actual stomach of these ruminants, because this is making the digestive enzymes. So the first three chambers, they are considered by many scientists as the modified parts of the esophagus. The first three chambers, they are taken as the modifications. But the embryological studies, they have shown that they are the real parts of the stomach, and these are not the modifications of esophagus. So now we have known that these four are the actual chambers of the stomach, and abomesum is the actual stomach as it is glandular in nature. Now here the rumen is very large, it is sac-like, and it serves mainly as the storage organ. So if we take the example of a cow or a buffalo which is eating some food, so the food is chewed to some extent, it is taken directly into the rumen, and here the food is stored. Now whenever the food is has to be digested, the animal, it regurgitates. So it will take back the food from the rumen again into the esophagus, again into the mouth. It will be again chewed fully, and it will be mixed with saliva. It will be taken back again into the esophagus, and again it will come to the stomach. So the whole course of the food will be taken on later. So mainly here what we are discussing is that rumen is serving mainly as the storage organ. Now the cattle feed it fairly and rapidly and fills the rumen with grain or the grass. So whenever this rumen is full, the food within the rumen is churned by muscular contractions, and bacterial fermentation, it occurs in this particular chamber. So this is a very important thing. Both muscular contractions of the rumen and the bacterial fermentation, it occurs in this particular part, the rumen. So here we have the bacterial moieties which are present in the rumen, which will ferment the food. Now from here, the food, it passes by the degrees into the reticulum and hence to the mouth by the process of retroperistolysis. So retroperistolysis, or for regurgitation, it goes back into the esophagus. So what is the mechanism of the food ingestion and regurgitation? That will be taken on later. Okay, if we take this slide into account, this is a stomach of ovis. Ovis is a sheep and it has got a ruminant kind of stomach. So here, if we take up the labeling, A, the long pipe-like structure, is the esophagus. B is the rumen. On the very right side, we have a big chamber. This is the rumen. C is the reticulum. So from rumen, the food enters into this honeycomb chamber. You can very well see the internal structure of this chamber. This is very comparable to a honeycomb of a bee. Next is the saltarium or the omesum. So this is the fourth chamber. Sorry, this is the third chamber. As the first one was the rumen, second was the reticulum, third is the saltarium or omesum, and E is the abomesum, and this is the true stomach again over here, as it is glandular and secreting the digestive enzymes. And next we have the duodenum. So the food will pass into the intestine from duodenum. So that was the structure of the stomach of Ovis. Next we have the stomach of the camel. So the true ruminant stomach, it is under the suborder Ruminantia. So the camel's stomach is different in anatomy and histology with the stomach of the ruminants. So here, rumination and fermentation are the same like the true ruminants. As camel is not a true ruminant, but the mechanism of the chewing, the rumination and the fermentation, they are the very same as the true ruminants. In camels, the stomach is of 3 chambers. So if we go by the chambers of the camel stomach, the first chamber is the same, the rumen. Second chamber is the reticulum, which is again the very same. And the third chamber is abomesum. So here, omesum is absent. So if we compare the stomach of the camel with the ruminant, the omesum or the third chamber of the ruminant is absent over here. So we have got rumen, reticulum and abomesum. So the rumen and reticulum parts of the stomach of camel, the first rumen and the second reticulum, they have pouch-like water cells. So there is a very big debate over it. There was a very big debate that the water cells, they are gathering water and it is helping in camel to go long distances by days. But now it is very much clear that these water cells, they are not functioning in this way. So the pouches can by no means they can hold this much of water that would be required by the animal on a prolonged journey through the deserts where no water is available. There is no mean. Now the studies have shown that the camels, they get their water requirement during the journey by the breakdown of the glycogen of the muscles and fat of the hump. So all camels, they are having a hump over their back. So by the breakdown of that fat and glycogen of the hump, water is produced, and that water is used in long-term journeys by the camel. So here the water cells are not playing any kind of a role. Now physiologists or the scientists, they have shown that for each 100 grams of fat oxidized in the body, 110 grams of water is formed. So this is a very peculiar kind of physiology of camels, that 100 grams of fat can give you 100 grams of water. So they also have shown that the water cells, they do contain some metabolic water. They are containing some metabolic water which is produced in the reactions. This water is pure in nature and it helps in moistening the food. So this is a very important function of water cells, that they are containing water, but that water is metabolic water. That is not the water that was drunk by the camels. That is metabolic water, and that is functioning to moisten the food in the rumen. So this is the major function of the water cells. So after this, if we go by the regurgitation mechanism, what is the mechanism of intake of the food? So this diagram is showing the course of the movement of the food in the stomach of the ruminants. If you see on the right side, it has been written chewed grass. So number one, this is the chewed grass which is taken into the mouth. It is coming into the esophagus and it is entering into the rumen. So the arrows are showing that it is entering into the rumen. This is a very big part of the stomach, and now this food is stored over here. It is mechanically digested to some extent over here by the muscular contractions of the rumen, plus here the bacterial fermentation is also occurring. From the rumen, it is going into the second chamber, which is reticulum or the honeycomb chamber. So here there's some digestion is also occurring, and after reticulum, when the rumen is full, the cattle, it stops feeding. Now this pre-digested food from rumen and reticulum is taken back into the esophagus, back into the mouth, as we have seen that here is written number 4. So this food is going back to the mouth for re-chewing and redigestion. So the grass is ground up by chewing in the mouth again. And what happens then? This is the second course. Now after chewing the cud, this food is coming back into the esophagus, as the blue arrow is showing. Number 4, it is the chewed cud. It is coming back into the stomach, but it is not going into the rumen. This is a very important point. So here the food, it is entering into the omasum and abomasum. So ultimately through omasum, this food will enter into abomasum or the true stomach, and here the full digestion of the food will be given out, and the digested food will be given into the duodenum or the intestine. So if we see the whole course, this is the second course. If we see the course as a whole, it is just like this. So you can very well see in the diagram, the food is coming in. This is the first food that is been eaten by the animal. It is coming into rumen, it is going into reticulum. When they are full, it is going back to the mouth. It is regurgitated with the saliva, and the urea which is present in the saliva. So that I will be telling you later on. And this chewed food is coming back as shown in the blue arrows. It is coming back, and now it is going to omesum and abomesum, and finally to the intestine. Now there is a very big question that what happens in the rumen. As we have earlier discussed, that there is some mechanical digestion by the muscular contraction, and there is some bacterial fermentation that is occurring in the rumen. But what is actually happening in this part of the stomach? So let us see. So bacteria are present in the rumen, and they secrete cellulase. So this is the major enzyme that is secreted by these bacteria which are present in the rumen. So here bacteria are seen as round plate-like structures. So these bacteria, they are secreting cellulase, which is converting cellulose into glucose. So this cellulose is hydrolyzed to glucose by cellulase. So hydrolysis is taking place. Now this reaction, it provides energy for the growth of bacteria. Now in the later slides you will see this glucose which is being produced in this reaction will be taken up by the bacteria itself. So that's why it is a mutualism. It is a mutualistic kind of behavior. So bacteria are producing glucose and they are taking some of the glucose also. This glucose is used by the bacteria for anaerobic respiration. So this is a very, very important point. So on a whole, this is happening in the rumen. So cellulose is being converted into glucose, and this glucose will be used by the bacteria for anaerobic respiration. So here I must clear this point that whole of the glucose will not be taken up by the bacteria, but some of the glucose will be taken by the bacteria for fermentation, for anaerobic respiration, and by the process of making energy from glucose, these bacteria will grow in number. So that's how the bacteria, they are ever growing in the rumen of the ruminants. So once you have bacteria in your rumen, they will automatically grow and they will increase in number because they will take this glucose as a food for themselves. Okay, next. Now this glucose which is formed in the rumen will be taken up by bacteria. So here I am discussing this glucose uptake by the bacteria. So bacteria which are giving you cellulase, which is giving the host the enzyme cellulase, they absorb this glucose. Now just see this diagram. The plate-like structures are again bacteria, and they are absorbing glucose. If you see the right side of the diagram, there is a red arrow shown. It is showing that glucose is taken up by these bacteria. The glucose is used in anaerobic respiration, as we have earlier mentioned. Now, what is produced? When this glucose is taken up by these bacteria, fatty acids and methane, they are produced. And these are waste products. Bacteria, they don't need methane. Bacteria, they don't need fatty acids. Now this is a very important point to remember, that the fatty acids which are produced here, they are not required by the bacteria. Bacteria only need the glucose. Now the methane, it is given out by the ruminant. Ruminant even doesn't want any methane in the rumen or in the stomach. So that's how methane is produced inside the stomach of these ruminants. Now the fatty acids which are produced in the rumen, they are absorbed by the ruminant and they are used in the respiration process for making energy. So these fatty acids, they are taken up by the ruminant. So they are very helpful for the host.